Welcome to Psych for Psychology, a Nystrom & Associates podcast. Our host, Brett Cushing, is a licensed marriage and family therapist at Nystrom. Each week, he talks about all things mental health and therapy with guests, and you get a chance to dive into specific psychology topics that help promote personal development and wellness. And now, your host, Brett.
Hello and welcome to another podcast edition of Psych for Psychology. We have, once again, by popular demand, mental health hipster Isaac with us. And Isaac, great to have you here. You're going to be talking about diagnosis, and I'm really excited about this. Not because I'm particularly excited about diagnosing people. Mm-hmm. And we hear this a lot, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
That person's such a narcissist, right? Or we hear, that person, they're so OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And so there's all this sort of armchair diagnosing going on in our culture. Yep. And yet we feel kind of uncomfortable with people slapping labels on us, especially if it's perceived as negative. So I'm glad we have the mental health hipster Isaac again.
Back by popular demand. Give the people what they want.
Yes.
Can't keep me away.
And you're going to help us understand.
Except you didn't bring us coffee, so.
Yeah, I know. That's a lot.
Classic hipster.
I have a diagnosis. I had a diagnosis for him for not bringing in coffee.
He goes to a really obscure coffee shop that we've probably never heard of. So.
Yeah. Probably a really hipster place. Yeah.
Ginkgo beans underground.
Never heard of it.
Coffee dungeon.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, so the other thing we were talking about is why talk about diagnosing on this podcast, right? Is I think this is kind of an opportunity to sort of educate people too, is when they start with a therapist, maybe you've never been to therapy, maybe you have, but it's been a while. Your first appointment is essentially what we call a diagnostic assessment. So a fancy way of saying the therapist is gathering a lot of history. They're gathering kind of your background, your basic info, your symptoms. They want to hear about, what are the symptoms you've been experiencing, like anxiety, are you having trouble with sleep, are you having trouble with your appetite, et cetera, et cetera. And that all culminates basically in some sort of diagnosis being assigned, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so, that sounds ominous.
I know, which is why we're trying to take the scary factor out of it and basically say this is something that happens.
Right.
We were just talking about fear factor.
I was thinking the same thing when you said scary factor. Yeah, I was thinking.
We were literally talking about fear factor right before we pressed record. So we're taking the fear factor out of diagnosing.
That could have been a good episode on
just
factor.
People going into therapy.
Oh my gosh.
And coming out of their first diagnostic assessment. And you can hear Joe Rogan say, obviously fear was not a factor for you because you went and did your diagnostic assessment.
I think there's
really
here,
not
you guys.
that bad. Yeah.
I still have an adjustment disorder from watching that show.
We just had an
issue in our quote-unquote studio. Our microphone fell off the table, and so we had a couple screws loose here. So we fixed that, but it made me think about what we were just talking about with diagnosis. The microphone fell off the table, and in order to fix it, we had to diagnose what's the problem. Why did that happen?
That's absolutely what. Yes.
Yeah, so then we put a label on it, this screw was loose or this was loose, and then we can adjust it. But if you don't identify it and slap a diagnosis on it, it's hard to fix it. So a diagnosis, in a way, is a place. It's a starting point.
Yes.
And so, Isaac, you were telling us a little. Do you remember at all before this catastrophic event?
I blacked out.
Yeah, that's okay. We're all dissociating. This was so traumatic. But people are listening, and I don't think diagnosis is traumatic. It might be for some people, but it is. It feels so stigmatizing, and I'm being put into this box that I'll never break out of. So, now I have generalized anxiety disorder, and I'm going to have that all my life, and what do people think? So we really want to help people understand we get it. There might be something that feels stigmatizing. There's something that's really helpful. So why do we do this? How do people understand, this isn't kind of an end of the world thing? What's the benefit, et cetera?
I think it's hard because getting a mental health diagnosis is entrenched in who you are, as opposed to you going and get more of a medical diagnosis. Oh, you have COVID, right?
Oh, yeah.
We can point to that and say it's something external occurring within your body that we can treat, take care of, and eradicate. Saying you have depression feels much more like I am flawed. Right?
Wow, I've never heard it put that way. I like the way you put that.
Yeah, so and I think that's part of what happens. I shared a bit before about before I began this journey as a therapist myself, I got a diagnosis of general anxiety. And I remember feeling really downtrodden and sorrowful. Like, what is wrong with me? I didn't know I was like this messed up. I just went in to like talk about how I'm stressed, yada yada. And I wasn't educated about the fact that like, no, this is kind of like a necessary evil on the part of the provider. Like insurance requires this, and it's worth bearing in mind that while they put this label on you, that's not the entirety of how they view you, and it's not necessarily like a chronic condition.
That's a really good point. Like I had COVID, and I didn't say I'm COVID.
Yeah,
I said I have COVID. It's a part of me. It doesn't define me. Well, it maybe did for a few days. But people, what do they say a lot of times? I'm depressed. And how sort of all or nothing that is. Like, I'm either a depressed person or I'm not. And sometimes I'm depressed, sometimes I'm not. Same with anxiety.
Right.
So I really appreciate that, what you're saying.
And when you said, I think it's important for people to know, too, with the necessary evil, so just kind of, again, there might be some people thinking like, okay, well, why assign me a diagnosis at all for insurance purposes? And it really is the way that we get paid for what we do by people's insurance companies, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it kind of stems from like an older notion that, the DSM was very much trying to be in the medical field, and we kind of maybe lost sight a bit of some of those older, like maybe Freudian concepts of like, you're just going to sit on the couch and talk to me, right? And we don't have to necessarily put a label on everything, right?
And the DSM, just for those listening, the DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So basically, it's a large textbook type thing that it has all of the different diagnoses for mental health that you can think of.
And I think people who founded psychology, a lot of us think of Freud and Jung and others, they all really came out of the medical field and found psychology fascinating. And I don't know, I might get in deep yogurt for saying this, but I think my perception has been like psychology is the second class citizen to the medical field and has always been trying to sort of validate itself by using medical terms and medical diagnosis and things. I don't get too wrapped up in that. I don't know if a lot of therapists do either, but that's just my little bugaboo. I always felt like psychology, we were kind of trying to justify ourselves.
Right. The thing with like utilizing neuroscience these days, we're trying to say like, look at this brain region light up, this one, right? And we're like constantly trying to create medical interventions for entirely kind of humanistic concerns, right? We're trying to be something other than we are. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but psychology is it translates to the study of the soul.
How did I not know that?
Yeah.
Did you know that, Brad? You nodded.
I did.
I was like, yes, we all know that, as we are all in the field.
Yeah, and that's like kind of where it started. Right?
What is it again?
Study of the soul. Psych is it used to be pronounced like suke.
Okay.
Ology is always
study of. Okay, study of the soul. Wow.
So this is soul psychology when we say Psych for Psychology podcast. Yeah.
Yep.
So it really started out much more. People were more open to looking at dreams and kind of looser concepts, and maybe a bit of it was mysticism, thinking of like someone like Jung, but like it just started out in a very different place, and then medical advances made it more like, okay, we need to follow this kind of rigorous, especially like the scientific method. Psychology wanted to be like that, and science always uses categories, right, to talk about the world. So,
and it's not that it's totally divorced from the medical field. There's a lot of integration. We do know human behavior is so complex, and that's what we're looking at is human behavior. So there is a medical component that can be helpful for us as well. I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And when we think about diagnosing people, it can feel very medical, but it can it's also acknowledging this is really complex stuff. Why? I mean, I can think of a behavior I do, and why did I do that? And when I ask myself that question, I'm diagnosing, right? I'm trying to come up with, wow, shoot, why did I do that? I don't like that I keep doing this. Why do I do that? And I can come up with lots of different reasons and motivations, which just shows how complex it is and how natural it is that we are diagnosing and trying to figure ourselves out. And that's all we're trying to do with the diagnostic assessment.
Yeah, to a degree. It feels a bit limiting at times as a therapist to use a diagnosis. Like, especially because there's a lot of overlap between different labels too.
So true.
So you can meet criteria for PTSD and anxiety and depression, right? All at one. And sometimes people just throw the list at you.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, why don't we just go with one of those, right? Like, well, how much is it adding to put more and more onto the pile?
Yep. I know. So I supervise some therapists that are some of them getting their kind of feet under them in terms of diagnosing, and so we consult about that quite regularly. And I think one of the issues that they come up against is that first session, the therapist is trying to relate on it this human level, right? Instead of like, okay, let's check these boxes, let's take your temperature, and they don't take your temperature, but like it's like supposed to kind of feel like this doctor's office thing where you're typing on your computer because you're trying to get all this info for this diagnostic assessment, right? But the therapist is also so wanting to understand the person more deeply and build a relationship with them and build trust with them. So I think what can happen is people worry like, okay, that first session, the things that I say and talk about, as soon as I have more trust with this stranger, I'm going to talk about things differently. I'm going to share more information that I haven't shared before. So what I always tell people is the first, your diagnosis is absolutely subject to change, so it's like you might meet criteria, you might qualify for a certain diagnosis when you first come in. That does not mean that's with you for the rest of your life, right? That does not mean that that's your identity now going forward. And in fact, I discourage people from ever referring to themselves as their diagnosis, right? Because you had mentioned the example, Brett, of like, I'm anxious, I'm depressed. Well, some people say I'm borderline, right? Or some people say I'm bipolar. It's like, well, that's a condition, but that's not your identity, right? Yeah.
Yeah, especially with something like personality disorder.
Yeah.
The more you sit across the room from something like a personality disorder, the more you can see their kind of mind roving around, like, what is it that's causing me to consistently do these things as you get more and more below the surface. And you just see, like, I think personality disorders in particular have a lot more stigma, right? But you can see someone under there trying to, like, man, what have I been doing? What's going on with me? Why has this been so challenging? And, like, unpacking some of that. And it's a hard thing for me to hold that label over someone once you get to know them more personally.
Personality disorders, for people that are listening, it's a different set of disorders. I don't even know if I like that word, disorder. When you think about it, it's this disorder. Things aren't ordered in a way that's effective. And there we're talking about borderline personality, narcissism, antisocial personality, things like that. That's what we're talking about. People might have heard of, and the negative connotation that goes with that, with a personality disorder. But it's not limited to that. Like, people, it's becoming less stigmatized, but anxiety and depression can have those same kind of negative stigmas. And I like what you're saying, Christa, that this is not who I am, and yet when we're putting a label on them, it can feel like it. To what you were saying, and Isaac, to what you're saying at the beginning, it feels like this is who I am at my core, and it's not. It's just a starting point of kind of what's going on.
Exactly.
Just like when the microphone fell off the table.
I know.
We still love you, microphone.
Yeah.
Microphone, you're good enough no matter what.
Yes. And darn it, people like you. Yeah. So But we have to diagnose it. Like, what do we got to do? We got to fix this.
Well, and actually, I mean, if we're really going to take this analogy, I've been thinking about that analogy. Actually, that was so spot on, Brett. And because that would be like, the microphone falls off, and that would be like, now we treat this microphone stand for the rest of its existence as if that event was the defining thing about it.
Right. Just the type of microphone that falls.
Right? Yeah. And then we're like, act like it's forever. Right.
Or we'd be on edge around the microphone and we're all sort of talking, but waiting for it to fall again.
Exactly.
And sort of we call this fragilizing, making it fragile.
Yeah.
But isn't that the experience sometimes people have when they receive a diagnosis?
Yes.
They perceive that other people are going to react to them that way. And sometimes people do react to them that way. And it's sort of it's invalidating for people.
Right. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to treat people that way.
Yeah, to others, nor to ourselves, just because we have a diagnosis of some sort.
Yep.
This may or may not be worth mentioning, but I'm going to do it anyways. So
do it.
But talking about the DSM, they were at one point going to move more towards, instead of using categories, actually diagnosing based on symptoms.
Okay.
So like you take kind of a big inventory, a test, and it gives you a spectrum of all the different symptoms you're experiencing. So like social anxiety, sorrowfulness, worry, like it breaks down the list of symptoms under every diagnosis. And instead, we're going to focus on like the symptom buckets that you kind of land in.
Okay.
Because we all have, anyone can go to the DSM. Every time I open it and I'm like, I got this, right? It's like going onto WebMD and you have cancer. Right. Time, right?
Yeah.
But you can see yourself in all of them. You're like, I do some of this some of the time, right?
Yes.
And it's a matter of like, where on that spectrum is that kind of symptom causing concerns for you personally?
In some periods of my life and some times of my day, even, I am way on some other end of the spectrum than I might typically be. And I think that normalizes it a lot for people. And I have to throw this in because, Christa, you and I are both LMNOPs.
LMNOPs,
Licensed marriage and family therapists. And so we're trained with doing diagnostic assessments, but we're also trained not only to really just look at symptoms, but be looking at systems and systems of operation. So when a client comes in, we tend to look at people as marriage and family therapists. That's really a poor name. I don't like that.
Marriage and family therapists.
It makes it sound like, all we do is
marriage and family.
Yeah. It really, what it should be is systems therapy, because we look at our client, and our client isn't the client. Our client is the whole system by which this person operates. And so the person interacts with their parents, with their kids, with their spouse, with their partner, with their work environment. And that's all one big operating system that is affecting itself over and over again. And so we kind of look at what's the system of operation, and we try not to pathologize it and say, what's wrong, where's the disorder? We just try to look at it in a very non-judgmental way and say, okay, so it looks like this is kind of what's going on, that this system doesn't seem to be working. And so I had, this is typical because in marital therapy, it can all be about, well, he's wrong or she's wrong, and all about blame, and talk about diagnosing people. So that happens a lot in couples therapy. And I was talking about helping them not pathologize each other and just notice the system in operation. Like, so he starts to pursue you. So as the pursuer, now you start to distance yourself from him. And the more he pursues, the more you distance. And I said, well, let's just try something. Let's stop pursuing her and see what happens. And we're just going to, the idea is that we just change one element of the system, the whole system's going to change. And so that's another way we can look at it. And what I'm really trying to say is there's lots of different ways to try to understand what's going on. And the diagnostic assessment is one way we're trying to figure out, so what's happening here? What's not working?
Right.
And let's just pivot then from that to finding some solutions.
Exactly. No, to your point, like we're diagnosing, quote unquote, diagnosing things all the time, but we might be diagnosing a relational pattern, right? Like, so we're not officially diagnosing it, but like you were saying, we're noticing different dynamics going on and saying like, okay, sounds like this is what's going on, and here's what you can try, right?
Yeah. So within the individual, you can assess like how your thoughts and feelings and behaviors relate internally, right?
Yep.
I'll say for like the diagnostic assessment, the label at the end of it really means much of anything to me. And maybe that's just a personal.
Well, therapists are divided on this, by the way. Just like
absolutely.
for the audience.
Some people are very much like go through with a scalpel and they pull the book out every time, and other people are just like hammer.
Yeah.
Like there it is, right? Like a blunt instrument.
Yeah. So sure. Go ahead. Yep.
So for me, the utility of the diagnostic assessment is just that I get a lot of good overview of the person in a brief instance. I'd like to spend more time going through it, but I honestly want to get it out of the way so I can actually just talk to the person as soon as possible.
Yes. And in that way, I agree. I feel that way sometimes too, that the diagnostic assessment can be sort of a hindrance, right? Or a barrier at times, but more so because I'm trying to read that person, right? So I think that's another thing to kind of mention is even though there are these standards that we follow each time we have someone come in, I'm trying to gauge how is this going for this person that I'm going through the symptom checklist, and I'm, and then I'm going to tailor the conversation based on that too. So I think that's part of the process as well. And some people might, I don't know about the two of you, but there's times where someone comes in and I don't even have a chance to ask much about symptoms because they have been waiting to tell someone this story, right? Of the crisis that they've been in. And so that's where I will, and again, I might be different from some therapists, but that's where I'll kind of put aside my checklists and I'm just like listening to that. And I am still gathering quite a bit of information just mentally and noting things mentally, but like, so there's that piece too, where it's like, I'm just going to attend to this person right now. And I'm not going to be asking certain questions.
So part of diagnosing is just, what do we say? It's kind of obligatory because insurance is going to pay for this. And
it's
understandably, insurance is saying, how do we know what's going on? Let's get something objective. So that we can justify paying for this. We're not on the honor system. So part of it is for that. Part of it is also, I think it gives understanding. And it can be really validating. I don't know, but I'm sure you guys have had this too, where you sort of explain a diagnosis. And so, this is what borderline is. And people have a sense of relief. Like,
now I understand.
Like, this makes sense. Yes. And it's a sense of relief. And yet we don't camp out there. We're not going to define you this way. And we like to pivot towards, all right, well, let's figure out some things that are going to be a little more effective and learn some things. And so maybe we're trying to encourage people, don't get hung up on the diagnosis. We don't get hung up on it. We don't think it defines you. Who knows? Other people might, but that's their issue. Let it be their issue. You don't have to own that at all.
Right, exactly. So, Isaac, I know you've studied this quite a bit, right? Or at least you're really interested in this whole concept, right?
Yeah.
Was there anything that we haven't covered that comes to mind that you stand out?
Not off the top of my head. The reason I was originally interested in it is because the research lab I used to work in, we were studying kind of the overlap between schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and how psychosis is kind of a shared diagnostic feature between the two. So we were looking at brain and genetics to see if there's actually any differentiation between the two, or if it's just an expression of kind of the same brain genome structure.
Whoa. So, any conclusions from that you found? Or
I was just thinking about that last night when I went to bed. This is so timely.
Genes and the project wasn't finished by the time I went on to finish my master's. So I'm sure they have something published by now. I hope so. It's been 6 years since I've been out of the lab, and it does take quite a while for publications. It did seem there was something going on there in kind of the preliminary stuff, but I should go back and look into it.
Well, I also want to put in a plug for previous episodes of Psyched for Psychology because we do cover, I think there's one on psychosis itself. So there's lots of topics we've covered that if you go back through our archives, you can find various different things. So.
Oh, I should point, I just realized I'm wearing this shirt today, and it's out because it's
proudly dislabeled.
Yeah. It's an organization that does get-togethers for people with disability labels. It's like karaoke and stuff.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay, so you guys, just because you can't see him, so Isaac's wearing a t-shirt that says The Tap. And then on the back it says what? Proudly dislabeled?
Proudly dislabeled.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know about this organization. So tell really quick, tell us again.
Well, this might be a bit of nepotism here, but it's actually my stepdad's group.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it's been up and running for a while. They do big parties for people of all walks of life. You don't even have to have any sort of label to come there. It's meant to get everyone together. But they do like karaoke, cookouts. They just did a camping trip a few weeks ago.
What?
Yeah, so it's just a good time. It's free. So.
I love this. Actually, so I didn't know about this, but I actually do have, clients and people I know that, like, that's exactly what they would be looking for, is a way to get, like, together socially with, kind of others that...
Yeah, and I think it's, honestly, people have benefited immensely from it.
So how can people get connected or find more about it?
Good call.
I think there's the website on the back of the
turn
shirt.
Around, would you?
I don't have
it says yourtap.org.
There you go.
So YOURTAP, yourtap.org.
Yeah.
Sweet. That's super helpful. Thank you for that. Bonus. I actually did notice your shirt earlier, and I was like, tap. I assumed it was
Everyone's like, it's a beer thing. And I'm like,
I was like, it's either a bar or...
My dad does love beer.
Okay, but it's not related.
Not beer related.
Hey, that's really cool. Thanks. I'm glad we were able to share that. Plug that.
That's some bonus content right there. Right?
Yeah. So yourtap.org.
Yes.
Terrific.
Yes.
Well, we started talking about diagnosis, and what does it say again at the back?
Proudly
dislabeled.
Right. I love that. That's so appropriate. Did you wear that on purpose today?
No, actually.
Okay.
I just grabbed a shirt. I have very limited apparel choices. I don't care about clothes much, so I just kind of grabbed
as a hipster, right?
Yes. Classic.
Well, and maybe that's a good kind of summation, too.
Yeah.
Is we want to emphasize when people are getting a diagnosis, you don't have to have shame about that. You don't have to have any kind of shame in relation to that. We diagnose, it's part of our human condition. We do it all over in our culture.
Yes.
And when we successfully go through therapy, we're dislabeled, aren't we?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And we can take what we've learned and we can apply it to other people, and if nothing else, apply a lot more compassion and understanding to those around us. Lovely. So thanks for joining us again. We look forward to sharing again on our next podcast of Psyched for Psychology.
Thank you as always for listening, and please be sure to leave us a review. While this podcast can't be a replacement for therapy, we hope you enjoyed our discussion today and join us again next time. Nystrom & Associates is always available to those who are struggling. If you find yourself in need of support and help, please check us out at nystromcounseling.com.